Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Afghanistan's economy is in tatters after many years of war. The country is facing significant difficulties in improving the lives of its people, dealing with rampant corruption, developing its judicial system, and combating a worsening opium problem. Where will the solutions to these challenges come from? What grounds are there for optimism? And what might China's role be in Afghanistan's future? Today, I'm very much honored to be joined here by Afghanistan's Minister of Food and Agriculture, Mr. Azadullah Zamir. But before we start the interview, let's look at this.
Afghanistan, a landlocked mountainous country located within South and Central Asia, historically known as the gateway to South Asia, enjoys a very important strategic position. Afghan culture is rooted in its nomadic and tribal society, with different regions of the country having their own traditions. In the 1970s, a series of coups was followed by the Soviet invasion, and then civil war that devastated much of Afghanistan. The United States supported anti-Soviet Afghan Mujahideen and foreign Afghan Arab fighters till the 9/11 attack in 2001. US and UK forces then bombed parts of Afghanistan and worked with ground forces of the Northern Alliance to remove the Taliban from power and destroy al-Qaeda training camps. The country has suffered from the constant conflicts and violence ever since. Following the presidential election, President Karzai left power and Ashraf Ghani became president in September 2014. The US war in Afghanistan officially ended in December, but thousands of US-led NATO troops have remained in the country to train and advise Afghan government forces. China is showing an increasing willingness to play a constructive role in Afghanistan's reconstruction and national reconciliation. And China's Afghan strategy made a breakthrough in 2014 with the idea of the Belt and Road Initiative. Afghanistan is an important stop on the New Silk Road. To rebuild the country and society is the common aspiration not only of Afghans, but also of peace-loving people.
Welcome to Dialogue, sir. About reconstruction in Afghanistan, which is part of the Belt and Road Initiative. And the key word about this blueprint of Mr. Xi Jinping is interconnectivity and the construction of infrastructure. Therefore, I wonder if your suggestions have anything to do with the EIIB, for example.
As you mentioned, it is about the interconnectivity. In Afghanistan, as it happened to be at the center of Asia, connecting Central Asia to South Asia, I think we can greatly contribute in the number of initiatives that has been taken so far are already will be complementing this initiative. The AIB bank can definitely engage in a number of initiatives that we have, like the 5-country railway between Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. That ADB, Asian Development Bank, is a major contributor, but we are welcome other investors too and bank to be part of it. The other initiative that was launched last year is the TAPI pipeline, the gas project moving from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan to Pakistan and India. And we just signed the CASA 1000, the energy, the electricity that will be moving from Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, en route from Afghanistan to Pakistan. So these are the initiatives, and like that, the Afghan railway, ring road, connecting 16 provinces in the country that will be connected to these initiatives and others. So there's a lot of potential for the bank to invest in Afghanistan.
Is China the biggest investor?
China is an important and one of the significant investors. We have had so far a number of at least two Chinese companies that invested in the natural resources, in mining as well as in the gas so far. And we have signed a number of initiatives where the government of working with the Afghan government on the housing project, on some of other initiatives.
But what about the security? Because that's the top concern for the Chinese workers as well as other people involved in the reconstruction process in your war-torn country.
There is a great collaboration between the government of Afghanistan and the government of China on information sharing and discussion and strategic partnership on how to tackle this issue that's impacting both countries, Afghanistan.
Your country is a landlocked country, and therefore water supply might come across as a major concern. Due to the global warming and climate change, do you think the agriculture-led reconstruction in your country will be facing a very embarrassing issue of water scarcity?
We have initiated the process of establishing or investing on 25 water dams. 12 already started. We have just inaugurated the Salma Dam. And there's Kamal Khan and others, and 5 more are in the tendering process. So this, to some extent, though Afghanistan will be impacted due to the climate change. But looking in 2025, as we are in the headwater, we are a mountainous country that our water flow to the other countries, to our regional partners. So we will be better off than our neighboring country. So investing, storing our water, protecting our water, in making it more efficiently, I think with the agricultural land we have and the population we have, we'll not only be able to contribute for the food security of Afghanistan, but also to feed other people in the region and beyond.
How can we guarantee that all the relief funds or investment will find their way into the correct hands? For example, Afghanistan is plagued by a rampant corruption problem. Are there grounds for optimism that this can be overcome? What is being done?
The current administration has a very clear plan on tackling. And when we are going to Brussels conference end of this year, we'll not only go with a plan on how we are tackling, we'll go with a clear and achievements on how we have initiated. We have established a special committee that will be looking at these corruption cases. And for the first time, the senior roles of the past and present, including ministers, will be interrogated if there are any case of corruption. So these are some of the major and bold steps that have been taken to address that concerns and issue.
We've been discussing the benefits of the Belt and Road Initiative, but do you think other than the investment from ADB in China, or what do you think of the role of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for which you still remain an observer state? Do you think you're going to be transformed from an observer state to a former membership of this SCO?
Our administration are working, and we are very much being fully engaged with the corporations. What we see is, just to give you another, with the AIB Bank, we are finalizing our membership. So we are taking the steps to have Afghanistan not only be an observer, but taking a step forward to be more involved in the process and be a full member.
Following the general campaign, President Ashraf Ghani was able to form a coalition government. It's called the National Unity Government with, for example, Abdullah, who is now called the Chief Executive Officer, which is a very interesting title. I interviewed him a few months ago. What do you think of this process of national reconciliation between major political forces? Do you think this will guarantee the rebuilding itself economically?
Look how they have started in the situation right now, the way it has been working. We are moving on a positive direction. There has been more inclusion now than it was in the past. The initiatives that are being taken by the national unity governments are widely supported. Initially, it had a bumpy start, but it is very smooth, and others are coming and joining to support the initiative, whether that be the development, whether that be the anti-corruption, whether that would be regional cooperation and beyond.
In your country, there are several major political forces like Northern Alliance, government forces, Pashtun in southern Afghanistan. How much of your territory has the government been able to control? Do you think the slowing down of American military withdrawal from your country will help further stabilize the situation?
These are whether the former Northern Alliance or the Pashtuns or the others, these are all part of the government right now. They have been actively engaged in the past 1.5 years.
By Pashtun, I mean it's the power base of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Is that true?
Not true. For example, in Faryab or in Badakhshan, which are mostly Tajik, Farsi speaking, so that we still have some issue. We still have Taliban. And they have been supported by the terrorist group from the region and beyond. So it's not an Afghan issue only. It's not a one-tribe issue. It's an issue that we are facing. What the Afghan security forces, which have taken the lead on the fight, on a daily basis, we are combating on 16, we have operation in 16 different location provinces in Afghanistan. So our forces are on the lead and we are winning on all grounds.
Security remains a top concern for all parties involved in the post-war reconstruction. The current presidential race in the United States may have added to a lot of the unpredictability and uncertainty concerning your domestic politics. I'm talking about the rebuilding. Are you convinced that the successor to President Obama will either quicken the pace of a military drawdown or slow it down to hopefully further stabilize the situation and lay the groundwork for reconstruction?
What we have an understanding right now that the Afghan security forces are on the lead and their role has been limited to support and training. And this, our understanding, will remain. But how the next president will put his agenda together is a question we'd like to also figure out. But what we have been doing is that our forces have shown capabilities. If I compare last year, our security forces were a 12-year kid. This year is a 22-year-old strong. That experience has demonstrated that we have not only pushed them backward, we have been able to target the sanctuaries of the terrorist groups and those fighting against the government in a very constructive way. Not only pushing them backward, but holding those positions and establishing our national, local institutions.
Who is your arch enemy currently in your country? The Taliban, terrorists, warlords, or perhaps Daesh, ISIL?
Well, those who are not respecting the Afghan constitution. The Afghan constitution is our main area. If the Taliban are accepting the Afghan constitution, we welcome them. Daesh, others are very clear that they don't, and the terrorist groups, that they have a different agenda. They, not only for Afghanistan, but for the region and beyond. So we only welcome those Afghans who respect the constitution and want to have a peaceful life.
President Ghani says he will bury Daesh in Afghanistan, and that's a very bold declaration to pick fight with the terrorists. At the same time, the Chinese government has also shown clearly its security concern about, for example, the instability in our Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, and we share the border with Afghanistan. So part of the task of the SU, of course, is to fight the three evil forces, and one of them is terrorism. Do you think Afghanistan will be a powerful partner of China in the war against Islamic extremism and terrorism at the same time? Are we in the same boat?
Absolutely. We have been fighting the war of many countries in Afghanistan on their behalf. If we look at the news of the past few days, you'll find out that Daesh has been badly defeated in Nangarhar province. Many of the commanders has been killed and defeated on the ground. So we are very committed on what we say in fighting terrorism and there's a strong well of partnership and working with China to fight.
The other threat to the well-being of your country is drug plantation and drug trafficking. Heroin finds its way to Europe through Russia. Do you think Russia is also involved in the war against drug?
We welcome their the partnership with our neighboring country, with Russia, fighting this issue of drug. Not only the smuggling it, but also how to address the core and fundamental issue of to find alternative livelihood for the people out here, so that they are not convinced that the only mean to survive is by cultivating poppy. Afghanistan is working very closely with Russia on a number of fronts, including the drug trafficking and controlling of that one.
Thank you very much. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Asadullah Zamir, the Minister of Agriculture from Afghanistan. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us, please. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
When we look at yet another threat, warlords, do you think they take hostage for ransoms, or they are part of the Taliban, they are part of the terrorism? What do you think of your enormous efforts to align yourself with some of the warlords who are willing and ready to accept your constitution in the building?
We don't see the warlord issue anymore.
Why?
As it's clear that those who are not respecting the Afghan constitution, they are clearly against the people of Afghanistan. If they are not respecting the will of the Afghan people, the government has a strong stance against them. However, we do give those who have some grievances, if we say, whether it's with the government or among the different tribes, to the government negotiate and find solution for them to reintegrate into the process and work with them to have a normal life and be back in the society. So we do work with those who have some grievances and negotiate and mitigate between the different tribes and the local governance offices.
How important is the tribal culture in shaping the governance in Afghanistan?
Very much. We, at the subnational level, at the provincial, district, and the village level, we have the community development councils that have been established in Afghanistan, and they are representative of the tribes and community elders who are actually making this decision on the type of development that need to be happening at the village level and choose their priority. So the engine for the government, or the entry point for the government to enter village, is those community councils that we are working very closely, whether that be agriculture, that be road, schools, clinic. They have been very an active part of our development efforts.
A very important part of a modern democracy is the spirit of rule of law and such spirit in practice. I wonder if it's been translated into reality in the post-war Afghanistan. You have two entirely different sets of legislation or execution of the laws. One is, of course, in line with the tribal culture. The other, in whatever sense, is in strict compliance with modern legal institutions. Do you see such clashes in your country?
You see, where the government has stronghold in prisons, we have established our judicial system and to reach to the people, and people are coming. Where there has been some area that are some instability is there, been able to go there, so there may be decision. A lot of time the nature or the final decision is different, but the process is different. So what people have been, where we have the government institution or judicially, whether it's the Attorney General of Representations or the our justice units or other relevant units, we are working with community to solve the issue. But the decision the way you have described is not that mechanism in Afghanistan. There's a strong respect of the general public for the community elders, for the decision they make. And the decision has been very consultative process. So what we have seen helping in those areas where there's still the tribal mechanism in place for the making such decision, and educating them and helping them, and also bringing women into the panel to have an inclusive process. So there has been training with those community elders on the state laws and procedures and how they can be part of our process.
Yeah, those outside Afghanistan may find it difficult, if not confusing, to understand the powerful role that the community elders play in the training and education, and indeed in the process of the consultation to strengthen the social cohesiveness. By the way, you put your finger on the issue of women. What about the political participation of women? Because this is totally against the preaching of the radical Taliban.
That's why we have difference of opinion. We have women in the government, we have ministers, we have 4 women in the cabinet of Afghanistan as a minister.
Are they placed under strict protection because they might become the target of terrorist attacks?
Terrorists do not see difference between men. Anyone who's working for the welfare of the people are being, and women are also part of it. And they have been attacked, truly. So women are in the cabinet of Afghanistan, women are in the civil society. In the private sector, we have organizations, companies run by women. In fact, some of them have been very prominent. And we also have a majority or a number of women, more than 37% of the parliaments are represented by women. So we had a great representation of women in all sectors of life in Afghanistan. 15 years ago, there was no women in school going during the Taliban time. Now we have millions of people. More than 9.5 million kids are going to school, that over 45% of them are women and girls. So it's a big change we see. We believe in the rights of women. We believe that if we don't invest in educating women, we will not have a stable, prosperous Afghanistan.
So you believe that the women in Afghanistan have equal access to education and therefore they are guaranteed full employment? Is that your understatement? What about the joblessness for women, so to speak?
There have been more women representation in government, private sector, civil society than it was 15 years ago. We have more than 37% of our parliament represented by women. We have ministers, deputy ministers, directors in the government that are women. So their role has been, and compared to 15 years ago, no girls and women at school to now, close to 45% of women at school. These are some really positive progress that we have made. And on the issue of that the technology has actually made is an entry level for women to get to connected not only to each other in Afghanistan but to the world through the social media, through the communication. Our schools, colleges where boys and girls both study are now connected to other universities in the world. So this is an opening of the mind that our men and women have been connected and have been communicating with the students in, for example, in China, with the students in Europe, and with the students with other Asian countries.
One follow-up question about the use of digital technology and the pervasive use of a mobile phone in your country. Do you think digital technology has increased the gap between rich and poor, haves and have-nots, or the other way around?
Compared to back 15 years ago, we almost had no mobile technology at all. Now, 24 million users out of 31 million population we have. This has helped connectivity. This has helped people to be well informed, to communicate, to understand about what government does, what international community does and what they don't, and to have them hold them accountable, to pass on their voices. So indeed, it has been transforming how we live, how we talk, how we learn in Afghanistan.
But there are always two sides to the same coin. You have the positive side, but the downside may imply rapid spread of dangerous thoughts of extremism from ISIL or some madrasa schools in either Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, where you saw some very dangerous graduates joining the ISIL and got involved in terrorist blasts in London or other parts of Europe. By the way, a victim of terrorism, and therefore your country exported the second biggest number of migrants to Europe following Syria. What do you think of this downside?
Every technology has both sides, and the terrorist groups will do everything to manipulate people. What we have to see is we have to look at the positive impact and be prepared and have plan on how to address, how to mitigate those risks. For example, the Daesh started in Afghanistan a radio channel. We find it through the technology where signals are coming where they have been operating and shut it down. So indeed, it has its own impact also. They can be misused. But what we have to see how we invest, how we have to invest to limit those groups, how they're operating, how they're using it, and invest more on the positive aspect, passing on the message and educating people. Educating is the most important aspect. We have to invest on the education.
The last question is again a geopolitical one. Your country is surrounded by many big neighboring countries, such as India, the second most populous country in the world other than China, and Pakistan. Do you think these two countries are competing for influence on the rebuilding in Afghanistan? And how does Afghanistan position itself in the very difficult process of rapprochement between Pakistan and India?
We see what we do is we want to have a mutual, beneficial, and respectful relationship with our neighbors. We don't want to become the have or misuse of one country for another purposes against another country. We do not support that initiative, and we want to have friendly and brotherhood relationship with all our neighbors.
You have been very cautious in handling diplomacy with all the powerful neighboring countries. We keep our fingers crossed for the happiness of our Afghan people and friends. Thank you very much for being part of this dialogue here in Tianjin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And say hello to your people.
I will. Thank you for having us here.